Good afternoon, everyone. So for this afternoon, I will be discussing about defining scope. So the next step in project scope management is to provide a detailed definition of the work for the project. Good scope definition is very important to project success because it helps improve the accuracy of time, cost, and resources estimates. It defines also a baseline for performance measurement and a project control, and it aids in communicating clear responsibilities. The main tools and techniques used in defining scope include expert judgment, data analysis, decision making, interpersonal and team skills, and product analysis. The main output of scope definition are the project scope statement and project documents updates. In Table 5.2, shows the project charter for the IT upgrade project described in the opening case. Notice how information from the project charter provides a basis for further defining a project scope. The charter describes a high-level scope, time and cost goals for the project, objectives, and success criteria, a general approach to accomplishing a project goals, and the main roles and responsibilities of important project stakeholders. Although contents vary, project scope statement should include at least a product scope description, product users acceptance criteria, and detailed information on all project deliverables. It is also helpful to document other scope-related information, such as project boundaries, constraints, and assumptions. Project scope statement should also reference supporting documents, such as product specification that will affect that what products are created or purchased, or corporate policies which might affect how products or services are produced. Many IT projects require detailed functional and design specification for developing software, which also should be referenced in the detailed scope statement. As time progresses, the scope of a project should become more clear and specific. For example, the project charter for the IT upgrade project in Table 5.2 includes a short statement about the servers and other computers and software that the project may affect. Table 5.3 provides an example of how the scope becomes progressively more detailed and scope statement level version 1 and version 2. As we notice in Table 5.3, that the project scope statement often refer to related documents, which can be product specification, product brochures, or other plans. As more information becomes available and decisions are made related project scope, such as specific products that will purchase or changes that have been approved. The project team should update on the project scope management statement. The team might name different iterations of the scope statement version 1, version 2, and so on. So these updates may also require changes to other project documents. For example, if the company must purchase servers from a supplier it has never worked with before, the procurement management plan should include information on working with that new supplier. An up-to-date project scope statement, it is important also to document for developing and confirming a common understanding of the project scope. And it is also described in detail the work to be accomplished of the project and satisfaction and preventing scope creep as described later in this chapter. So the next one we have media snapshot. So inaccurate requirements gathering continues to be one of the main causes of project failure. Organizations lack the resources and maturity in requirement management, which come at a price. The authors of the 2014 PMI in-depth report on requirements management state that for every dollar spent on other projects and programs, 5.1% is wasted due to poor requirements management. Put in more striking terms, this amounts to US 51 million wasted for every US 1 billion spent. There's a lot of potential value failing through the cracks in the project-driven world. So this report concludes by suggesting an organization need to be developed people, processes, and culture to improve requirements management. So in creating the work breakdown structure, so after collecting requirements and defining scope, the next step in project scope management is to create a work breakdown structure. A work breakdown structure, or the WBS, is deliverable-oriented grouping of the work involved in a project that defines its total scope. Because most project involves many people and many different deliverables, it is important to organize and divide the work into logical parts based on how the work will be performed. So the WBS is a foundation document in a project management because it provides the basis for planning and managing project schedules, costs, resources, and changes. Because WB is also, it defines the total scope of the project. So some project management experts believe that the work should not be done on a project if it is not included in WBS. Therefore, it is crucial to develop a WBS. The project management plan, project document, enterprise environmental factors, and organizational processes. Assets are the primary inputs for creating a WBS. In addition to expert judgment, the main tool or technique is decomposition. That is, subdividing project deliverables into smaller pieces. The outputs of the process of creating the WBS are the scope baseline and project document updates. The scope baseline includes the approved project scope, the statement, and its associated WBS and WBS dictionary. So we have here sample entered WBS organized by product. So in figure 5.4 shows a software product release project created by PMI. As we notice that instead of showing product deliverables in level 2, it is organized around deliverables for each project phase, product requirements, detailed design, construct, and integration and test, as well as another level number 2 item for project management. Table 5.4 shows the same WBS in a tabular or list format. This level numbering is the base of the Project Management Institute project standard for the work breakdown structure, second edition in 2006. So many documents such as contract used in tabular format, but the numbering scheme may vary. Project management software also uses in tabular format. The WBS provides the basis for creating activities that are entered in the task name column in a Microsoft project, and the hierarchy or level of tasks is shown by indicating and numbering tasks within the software. Be sure to check with your organization to see which numbering scheme it prefers to use for WBS. To avoid confusion, it is important to decide a numbering scheme and then use it when referring to WBS items. Also determine how you will name WBS items. Some organizations use only nouns to focus on describing deliverables, as PMI recommends. For example, instead of using the words define requirements on a WBS, use requirements definition. Activities on a schedule below requirements definition would include verb phrases, as described in Chapter 6, Project Schedule Management. Remember that the main purpose of the WBS is to define all the work required to complete the project. So focus on that while following your organization's instructional guidelines. A work package is a task at the lowest level of the WBS. A work package also represents the level of work that the project management monitors and controls. You can think of work packages in terms of accountability and reporting. If a project has a relatively short time frame and requires weekly progress reports, a work package might represent work completed in 1 week or less. And if a project has a very long time frame and requires quarterly project reports, a work package might represent work completed in 1 month or more. A work package might also be the procurement of a specific product or products, such as an item or items purchased from the outside sources. A work package also should be defined at the proper level so the project manager can clearly establish an estimate for the effort needed to complete it. Estimate the cost of all required resources and evaluate the quality of the results when the work package is finished. So, when using project management software, estimate of work time should be entered only at the work package level. The rest of the WBS items are just groupings or summary tasks for work packages. The software automatically calculates durations, estimate for various WBS levels based on the data entered for each group or work package at the WBS hierarchy. In Figure 5.5 shows a template file from Microsoft Project 2016 for a software development project. The Level 2 WBS categories include scope, analysis or software requirements, design, development, testing training, documentation, pilot, deployment, and post-implementation review. Activities are shown in the analysis software requirements. Notice that the WBS is the basis for creating a Gantt chart. As described in more detail in Chapter 6, Project Schedule Management, you will learn more about Gantt chart in Chapter 6, the Project Schedule Management. The example of WBS shown here in the simplified so that they are somewhat easy to understand and construct. Nevertheless, it is very difficult to create a good WBS. To create a good WBS, you must understand the project and its scope and incorporate the needs and knowledge of the stakeholders. The project manager and the project team must decide as a group on how to organize the work and how to include many levels in a WBS. While many project managers have found that they should focus on doing the top levels well before becoming bogged down in more detailed levels. It is also true that more accurate estimate of scope, time, and cost are obtained when the project is defined appropriately and in sufficient detail. Operating at too high a level increases project risk. The act of defining the WBS is meant to offset the risk by considering the project details in advance for their execution. Many people confuse tasks on a WBS with specifications. Tasks on a WBS represent works that need to be done or to complete the project. For instance, if you are creating a WBS to redesign a kitchen, you might have level number 2 categories called design, purchasing, flooring, walls, cabinets, and appliances. Under flooring, you might have tasks to remove the old flooring, install the new flooring, and install the trim. You would not have tasks like 12 feet by 14 feet of light oak or flooring must be durable, so these are specifications. So another concern when creating a WBS is how to organize it to provide the basis for the project schedule. You should focus on what work needs to be done and how it will be done, not when it will be done. In other words, the tasks do not have to develop as sequential list of steps. If If you want some time-based flow for the work, you can create a WBS using the project management process. Groups of initiating, planning, executing, monitoring, controlling, and closing as level number 2 in the WBS. By doing this, not only does the project team follow good project management practice, the WBS task can also be mapped more easily against time. For example, in figure 5.6 shows a WBS and Gantt chart for a website project, organized by the project management process groups. Activities under initiating include selecting a project manager, forming the project team, and developing the project charter. The activities under planning includes developing a scope statement, creating a WBS, and developing and refining other plans, which would be broken down in more detail for a real project. Concept, website design, website development, and rollout are WBS level number 3 items under executing. The executing tasks vary most from project to project, but many of the activities under the project management process groups would be similar for all projects. If you do not use the project management process groups in the WBS, you can have a level number 2 category called project management to make sure that you account for all activities related to managing the project, as was done in figure 5.4 from PMI. And remember that all of your work should be included in the WBS, including the project management. In executing tasks for GWD, consulting WBS, some project teams like to list every developer they need to produce and then use those of the basis for creating all part of the WBS. In Chapter 3, GWD Consulting used the project management process groups for the level number 2 items in its WBS for the project management Internet site project. Then, in breaking down the executing section, the project team focused on the product developers it had to produce. In Table 5.5 shows that the categories and team used for the part of the WBS. Recall that the scope statement should list and describe all the deliverables required to the project. It is very important to ensure consistency between the project charter, scope statement, WBS, and Gantt chart to define the scope of a project accurately. It is also important to involve the entire project team and the customer in creating and reviewing the WBS. People who will do the work should help to plan the work by creating the WBS. Having group meetings to develop a WBS helps everyone understand what work must be done to the entire project and how it would be done. So keeping the people involved, it also helps to identify where coordination between different work packages will be required. So we have here the approaches to developing a work breakdown structures. First, we have using guidelines. If guidelines exist for developing a WBS, it is very important to follow them. Some organizations in U.S. Department of Defense or the DoD, for examples, prescribe form and content for WBS for particular projects. Many DoD projects require contractors to prepare their proposals based on the DoD provides WBS. These proposals must include cost estimate for each task in the WBS at a detailed and summary level. The cost for the entire project must be calculated by summing the cost of all the lower levels WBS tasks. When DoD personnel evaluate cost proposals, they must compare the contractor's cost with the DoD's estimates. A large variation in cost for a certain WBS Task often indicates confusion as to what work must be done. So, many organizations provide guidelines and templates for developing WBS, as well as example of WBS from past projects. Microsoft Project in 2016 comes with several templates and more available on Microsoft website and other sites. At the request of many of its members, PMI developed a WBS practice standard to provide guidance for developing and applying the WBS to project management. The practice standard includes sample WBS for a wide variety of projects in various industries, including products for web design, telecom, service industries, outsourcing, and software implementations. The project managers and their teams should review appropriate information to develop their unique project WBS for more efficiently. The next one is we have the analogy approach. Another method for constructing a WBS is the analogy approach. In the analogy approach, you can use a similar project's WBS as a starting point. For example, Kim Ngoyen from the opening case might learn that one of her organization suppliers did a similar IT upgrade project last year. She could ask them to share their WBS for the project to provide a starting point for her own project. McDonnell Aircraft Company, now part of Boeing, provides an example of using an analogy approach when creating a WBS. McDonnell Aircraft Company designed and manufactured several different fighter aircraft. When creating a WBS for a new aircraft design, it started by using 74 predefined subsystems for building fighter aircraft based on a past experience. There was a level number 2 WBS item for the airframe that was composed of the level number 3 items such as a forward fuselage, center fuselage, aft fuselage, and wings. This generic, the product-oriented WBS provided a starting point for defining scope of a new aircraft project and developing cost estimate for new aircraft design. Some organizations keep a repository of the WBS and the other project documentation on file to assist people working on a project. In Project 2016 and many other software tools include sample files to assist users in creating a WBS and Gantt chart. We have the top-down and bottom-up approach. To use the top-down approach, start with the largest item of the project and break them into subordinate items. This process involves refining the work into greater and greater levels of details. After finishing the process, all resources should be assigned at the work package level. The top-down approach is the best suited to project managers who have vast technical insight and a big picture perspective. In the bottom-up approach, the team member first identify as many specific tasks related to the project as possible. Then, they aggregate the specific tasks and organize them into summary activities or higher levels in WBS. So the last one, we have mind mapping. Some project managers like to use mind mapping to develop WBS, as described in Chapter 4 during the discussion of SWOT analysis. Mind mapping is a technique that uses branches rotating from a core idea to the structured thoughts and ideas. So the last one is the mind mapping. Some project managers like to use mind mapping to help develop WBS. As described in Chapter 4 during the discussion of SWOT analysis, mind mapping is a technique that uses branches rotating from a core idea to structured thoughts and ideas. Instead of writing down tasks in a list or immediately trying to create a structure for tasks, mind mapping allows people to write and even draw pictures of ideas in a non-linear format. This more visuals, less structured approach to defining and grouping tasks can unlock creativity among the individuals and increase participation and morale among terms. In Figure 5.7 shows a diagram created with Matchware MindView in 6.0 software that used mind mapping to create a WBS for the IT upgrade project from the opening case. The rectangle near the center represents the entire project. Each of the four main branches radiating from the center represent the mail task or level number 2 items for the WBS. Different people at a meeting who are creating this mind map might have different rules in a project, which could help in deciding the tasks in the WBS structures. And after discovering the WBS items and their structures using the mind mapping technique, you could then translate information into chart or tabular form. As described earlier, a feature of Matchware's MindView in 6.0 software is that you can click a single icon to convert a mind map into a Gantt chart. The mind map provides the task list based on the WBS. MindView also lets you enter information about tasks, such as dependencies and durations, that generate a complete Gantt chart, and you can also export your mind map into the Microsoft project. Many of these items listed on the sample WBS are rather vague. What exactly does database update mean, for example? A WBS dictionary is a document that provides detailed information about each WBS items. The term dictionary should not be confused with defining terms or acronyms in their case. Such definitions belong to the glossary that would be included somewhere in the product documentations. Instead, the WBS dictionary is a definition of the work involved in the task, a clarification that makes a summary descriptions in the WB is easier to understand in terms of the approach taken to complete the work. So we have here also the table 5.6, the sample WBS dictionary entry. We have here the advice for creating a WBS. First, we have a unit work should appear in only one place in the WBS. The second one is the work content of the WBS item is the sum of the WBS item below it. A WBS item is the responsibility of only one person, even though many people might be working on it. And the fourth one is we have the WBS must be consistent with the work actually will be performed. It should be served the project team first and serve other purposes if only practical. The fifth is the project team members should be involved in developing the WBS to ensure consistency in buy-in. Next one is the each WBS item must be documented in WBS dictionary to ensure accurate understanding of the scope of work included and not included in that item. The last one we have the WBS must be flexible tool to accommodate inevitable changes while properly maintaining controlling of the work content and the project according to the scope statement. It is difficult to create a good project scope statement and WBS for a project. It is even more difficult, especially with the IT projects, to verify the project scope and minimize scope changes. Some project teams know from the start that the scope is very unclear and they must work closely with the project customer to design and produce various deliverables. In this case, the project team must develop a process for scope validation that meets unique project needs. Careful procedures must be developed to ensure that the customers are getting what they want and the project team has enough time and money to produce the desired products and services. In scope validations, involves formal acceptance of the complete project deliverables. This acceptance is often achieved by the customer inspections and then sign off on a key deliverables. The received formal acceptance for the project scope. The project team must develop unclear documentation for the project products, and procedures to evaluate whether they were completed correctly and satisfactorily. So we have here global issues. So many countries have had difficult controlling the scope of a large projects, especially those that involve advanced technologies and many different users. For example, the state government of Victoria, Australia, introduced a public transportation smart card called MyKey in 2010. Public Transport Victoria's descriptions of the card included the following information. Many cities around the world have public transport smart cards. MyKey has been designed to fit our state's unique needs. MyKey also users enjoy an integrated ticketing system that works across the state of trains, trams, and buses. Scope control involves managing changes to the project scope while keeping project goals and businesses in the strategy in mind. The goal of scope control is to influence the factors that causes scope changes, to ensure that changes are processed according to procedures developed as a part integrated change control, and to manage changes when they occur. And you cannot do a good job of controlling scope if you do not first do a good job of collecting requirements, defining scope, and validating scope. Suggestion for improving users' input. First, we have develop a good project selection for IT projects. Insist that all projects have a sponsor from their organizations. Second one is to have users on a project team. Some organizations require project managers to come from the business area of the project instead of the IT group. Some organizations assign core project managers to IT projects, one of the IT and the one from the main business group. The third one is we have regular meetings with defined agendas. The idea of meeting regularly sounds obvious, but many IT projects fail because the project team members do not have regular interactions with users. The fourth one is the deliver something from the project users and sponsored on a regular basis. If the delivered product is hardware or software, make sure it works first. And the last one is we have do not promise to deliver what the team cannot deliver in a particular time frame. Make sure the project schedule allows enough time to produce the deliverables. The next one is we have suggestion for reducing incomplete and changing requirements. First, we have developed and follow a requirements management process that includes procedures for determining initial requirements. The second one is employ techniques such as prototyping, use case modeling, and joint application design to understand user requirements truly. Prototyping involves developing a working replica of a system or some aspect of this system. The third one is we have put all requirements in writing and keep them currently and readily available. The fourth one is we have create a requirements management database for documentation and controlling requirements. Fifth one is to provide adequate testing to verify that the project's products perform as expected. So the sixth is the use a process for reviewing requested requirements changes from the system perspective. And emphasize completion dates. For example, a project manager at Farmland Industries Inc. in Kansas City may sure to keep her 15-month into 7 million integrated supply chain project on a track sitting by the project deadline. So the last one is to allocate resources specifically for handling changes requests. In using software to assess in project scope management, project manager and their teams can use several types of software to assess in a project scope management. As shown in the several and the figured tables in this chapter, you can use word processing software to create scope-related documents, and most people use spreadsheet and or presentation software to develop various charts, graphs, and metrics related to scope management. Mind mapping software can be useful also in developing AWBS. So that would be all. Thank you.